I understand why a socialist winning the New York City election might be something that concerns people. If you're a big moneyed interest individual, if you're somebody who works in Wall Street in New York, yeah, someone like a socialist assemblyman, Mamdani, winning might concern you because it concerns your direct financial interests. You might have to pay more for things like his ideas, like a government-funded grocery store in each of the 5 boroughs, meaning 5 grocery stores to experiment with a public option for certain basic necessities like food, water, and other, cooking items, and to compete with the private businesses. That might fail, that might succeed, but to you maybe you don't think that any of these ideas are worth it. You hear about the rent freeze, which is an idea that I don't share with Mamdani, and you get a little concerned. You hear about a free baby basket for a baby. Actually, can I be honest? Some of these I understand, like the rent freeze, I kind of agree with. The rich being taxed more, I understand why that would concern them. Not really of that a big concern to me. If it's a ridiculous tax rate, somebody can tell me that. But I mean, we're talking about one of the wealthiest cities on the planet that still has quite a significant problem with poverty. And I think that if you are sheltering some of the wealthiest people who have made their careers off of those around them, that there is a common community that everyone has to pay into. And so I might disagree with them on where the exact tax rate should be. I say tax them until people have good child care and community care, and community care meaning things like, good, like local gathering points where kids can, play basketball, good, clean roads. These are the things that you want to have funded. And if you have to tax everyone to do it, I think if you ask people, should we tax you to clean the roads? Should we tax you to make sure that everybody has a school lunch? Should we tax you to make sure that newborns have the basics that they need when they're brought into this world, taking a real pro-family approach? I think these are appealing to people. And while that might be scary because it's seen as government action from some in the country, or scary because, these things do cost money. And once I go to European countries like Finland that have a larger social safety net, guess what? The taxes are higher. It's not a gigantic surprise. But people wanted change. They saw Mamdani as an agent of change. They saw Andrew Cuomo, this sex pest, as an agent of the past with enough scandals to fill the Bible. And they decided that they would go with the agent of change who wants to try new ideas to shake the city up instead of going for Andrew Cuomo. And that's not a big surprise to me. I think that, that's going to be of concern to some of the Wall Street bros who might, fear paying a little bit more. I think that if you are somebody who doesn't like progressive cultural leanings, then maybe he's not going to be your friend because he's extremely queer friendly. Not a problem I have with him. Maybe you're going to be more concerned with his multicultural outlook since he's from New York City, an immigrant in New York City, which I've seen a lot of people fear-mongering about, but a New York City immigrant, I could not think of a more American picture than a New York City immigrant. But as we're going to see, that doesn't mean that everybody shares my viewpoint. Now, to be clear, Mamdani won, but he won not by a little bit, he won by a lot of bit. So the shock that we're about to go through, which many of you might kind of recoil at how either bigoted or stupid a lot of it is, to be completely frank, I want to just show you guys that it's not just probably because he won, but that he won convincingly.
Let me tell you, this was a political earthquake that should have the Democratic establishment running scared. What are we talking about here? Well, New York City primary upsets like Mamdani's, this is truly one for the record books. There are really only 2 that I could think of that are anything like this, and that's back in '89 for mayor when David Dinkins won over three-term mayor Ed Koch. Koch was running for a 4th term. The voters said, there was big turnout then, just like there was big turnout last night. And of course, more recently, if you want to take a look at a national picture, think back to 2018, New York's 14th Democratic primary going for Congress when AOC beat House Dem Caucus Chair Joe Crowley. This, to me, is very much like that, energizing young voters, energizing voters on the left, and providing what truly was a historic night last night in Democratic circles.
And, you know, look, on paper, this is a mayor's race. This is also New York City, special city. But is this more a New York City thing, or is this more of a sign of a larger national trend when it comes to the Democratic Party?
Yeah, just like AOC's victory in 2018, this did happen locally, but I think you can take it up nationally. What are we talking about here? Well, you know, you think about Democratic establishment, you think about Democratic Party leaders, pretty much all of them were behind Andrew Cuomo, but the bottom line is that...
Here's the first thing we got to take from this election, and there's a few things we should take from this election. One being that affordability was a leading issue for people, and I think that Mamdani constantly spoke to affordability, from things ranging from halal chicken, which he released a really good ad about when it comes to the permitting of food truck drivers to give people, you know, trying to make it more affordable and make it easier for these trucks to get permits. But also it had to do with anything from childcare to the affordability of housing, to all these different issues, affordability of just basic food items. And speaking of that constantly, did better than leaning into, I would say, pretty hollow attacks. Like, and that's not to say that there isn't legitimate attacks he could have used or did use. I mean, obviously, to not go after Cuomo when you're running against somebody as flawed as Cuomo would be ridiculous. But he concentrated a lot more on delivering his message to people, very social media focused, very media savvy. You could tell that there was people around him. He used warm colors for his ad. He came off very authentic. He's a great communicator. Like, there's a certain question about how he advertised himself, but getting your message to people, having good camera angles, having your message be snappy, having like vibrant colors, warm colors to make you seem homey, being a good communicator, all of these things are great, but you need a message at the end of that. Or you're really just like, you know, you could just be a Hollywood starlet, not a political actor. But concentrating on affordability instead of, like, I don't know, what some people, I guess, imagined the socialists would talk about, like, oh, Karl Marx's Das Kapital. No, if you're going to convince people of transformative economic change, you need to talk about how it's going to affect their daily life. Whether or not people attack it as, oh, this is just some like handout wish list, you need to meet people where they're at. And I think he did that. Funnily enough, though, it was people in the city of higher income brackets that ended up voting for him in larger margins than lower income brackets. So the question is whether or not, when another mayoral election comes around or as time passes and he tries to implement these policies, if he can implement these policies with the New York State Assembly, whether or not those numbers change, and as the taxes come into place, will it be the people who voted for him of higher income brackets, will they stay with him? And will the people of lower income brackets come closer to him, seeing more programs trying to direct and change in their communities? That's something that I wonder about. But again, the focus on working class issues, I think, worked. I think the focus on good media strategy and good authentic media communication worked. And I think that him looking as an agent of change, a young, authentic voice, in comparison to the scandal-ridden status quo figure of Andrew Cuomo, made him somebody that could build up momentum quite quickly and take him down.
Democratic base is fed up, done with the Democratic establishment. This is true in New York. It's true nationally. Democrats who say their party leaders should be replaced. Look at this. This is a recent poll from Reuters Ipsos. 62% of Democrats nationally say their party leaders should be replaced. Party leaders like Andrew Cuomo, party leaders like Jim Clyburn, who, of course, endorsed Andrew Cuomo. You think about all the Democrats that were behind Andrew Cuomo.
Did they ever call him Status Cuomo? If they won without that, that's quite impressive.
In the establishment, the Democratic base is fed up with them. And the bottom line is, nationally, the vast majority of Democrats think that their party leaders should be replaced. But it's more than this, right? Of course, Mamdani ran a pretty far left campaign, right, compared to what we normally see in Democratic circles. But the bottom line is, you talked to me 20, 30 years ago, there was no way I thought a Democratic socialist could win a nomination for mayor in New York or nationally. But look, Democrats who identify as liberal nationally, in 1994 is 25%. You go to 2004, 33%, 2014, 43%. Now the majority of Democrats nationally identify as liberal. If they're...
Do you know how much this will make people screech? in certain hard left circles. What do you mean Democrats are becoming more liberal and that means they're willing to elect a socialist? That doesn't make any sense. Welcome to how the average person looks at definitions. More liberal means more left wing instead of, you know, the way that you screech online about liberalism.
For a Democratic establishment, folks, who think this is just going to be contained in New York, I say this is a warning sign to you. It very much may not be.
And obviously a lot of eyeballs on this race, including what happens next, because now he's just got to match up with an independent incumbent in Mayor Eric Adams.
So, like they just mentioned, the election is not over. Zohran has to face off Eric Adams, who is the incumbent mayor, who's running as an independent, but could not achieve the Democratic nomination because he has a 20-something approval rating and is very unpopular due to a whole host of issues, from everything to corruption scandals, including including the Turkish government, to just his little quirky attitude. I mean, I don't want to get into everything around Eric Adams, but I'm just going to throw out there, I don't think he's going to win, and I don't think his messaging campaign is going to be strong enough to turn around his image.
So, this is a biblical moment. You know, when Jesus was on the cross, he said, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. All these Negroes who are asking me to step down, God, forgive them.
I'm sorry. I just don't think that he's as effective of a communicator as Mamdani. I don't think that this type of messaging will work. I don't think that anything I've seen from him on the campaign trail is going to work. And just picking up the same barbs that Cuomo used ineffectively to try to take down his campaign, as he's going to now build more momentum than ever, is a lost cause. Is a lost cause in my view. So that is why the reaction we see is so overwhelming now. Because even though the general isn't over, to most people it is. And for him to win so decisively in the primary, for him to get over 430,000 votes, a clear like 8-point lead over Cuomo, and that's before they went through the ranked choice voting system, which is where people thought that Mamdani would have to pick it up. But no, here we are. That is why you have a reaction like we're about to view. Now, we're going to go through some most social media posts, but first, let's start with the financial network. Where else should we start? CNBC. Let's hear what they have to say.
I don't want to go here, but Gotham. Have you seen what Batman is up against in Gotham, and what the guy running for mayor is up against? That's what it reminds me of. They're taking Wall Streeters and make him walk out onto the ice in the East River as and hope, and then they fall through. Yep, I mean, there is a class warfare that's going.
So what's happened here, I think, is
the rich type.
Like the Batman movie, guys. Remember where all those Wall Street people felt drowned in the movie? That's like now with this election. Look, his policies include taxing rich people more, okay? If you want to say something like, oh, he's going to make the city broke, he's going to make Wall Street less competitive, he's going to implement a bunch of these financial giveaway programs that you would imagine that many of the people at CNBC are not going to be a huge fan of. If that's what you want to say, okay, let's just say that. Well, to lead out with this just like dramatic, like, you guys remember in Star Wars where Darth Vader, Donald Trump's a lot like Darth Vader with Darth Vader. I'm sorry, man. This is not a Disney Channel original. Just communicate your fears. The problem is if he comes out and says something like, I don't believe Wall Street executives should be taxed more, I have a funny feeling that even the viewers at CNBC might hear that and go, eh. And even if you don't have that reaction, you know that everybody else is not going to be up in arms about it. Not in this political moment. If you go out there and complain about him saying that when a baby is born, the government should provide them with a baby carriage like certain Nordic states do as a pro-family policy, and like, that's not something you can really demonize all that much. Right? If you talk about a $30 minimum wage, Like, that maybe seems more unrealistic, but even that could be fearful for communicating, because the Democrats have gotten so little progress on the minimum wage issue to even have somebody out there punching on it again. It's something that's popular. It's something that's popular. I don't know if $30 should be the rate. It seems a little high to me. But is that something that wins? I think that's something that probably sounds like it wins, whether or not it's something that's deliverable. And so instead, we're left where? We're left with Batman movie comparisons. But I do want to be a little fair out there that these guys might have a little bit more fear because they see old posts like this from Zohran from just 5 years ago. So what kind of mayor does New York City need right now? Me. And he posts a picture of Comrade Rajaran, age 21, and a mayor over in the fantastic town of that. Okay, to even attempt to pronounce it, I feel like it would not be smart. But the point is, he's supporting a communist mayor who's dressed in red with a red flag and there's a hammer and sickle. Communism. And he tweeted this out 5 years ago. So if you're a Wall Street guy, maybe the fear isn't what can this guy implement within his first term in New York City, but more a fear of rising sentiment against radical socialism. Now, look, I don't know if he is still somebody who would be like, I am a communist. I mean, he's not really saying he's a communist here, but he's certainly leaning towards that. I know he describes himself as a democratic socialist, but I also know the policies of Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I think it's a far cry from, Marxist Leninist marching militiamen. And when you look at the focuses of his campaign, it doesn't really seem to be anything focused in authoritarian theory any more than you might say being as, kind to their position as I could be, or maybe some, money wasting programs from their point of view, from their perspective. So I understand looking at old messaging like this and going like, okay, buddy, is he a, what exactly type of socialist are you when we're talking about New York City here? But at the end of the day, voters did not care in comparison to the transformative policies that he was offering to people, instead of this tweet that he made 5 years ago where he sympathetically posted about a communist, or the fact that he describes himself as a socialist. People feel the pressure enough and saw the billionaires that backed Trump getting behind Andrew Cuomo, and they went with this guy saying rather a socialist than a Trump billionaire-funded sex pest who represents a status quo, which the people are tired of, or status Cuomo. Again, great line. But this type of messaging still is causing a lot of fear over at CNBC. Listen to Jim Cramer. Are they going to shoot the rich?
It is not the closing of a steakhouse.
The last time I honestly heard this much fear on the CNBC network and around, I don't even remember if it was CNBC, but on cable news, was when Bernie Sanders won Nevada. If anybody was paying attention back then, that moment, my gosh, if you looked at the cable news networks, they were talking as if, the Cultural Revolution was right about around the corner, and Bernie Sanders was going to go down the road golf clubbing sparrows.
That David Zaslav likes to, and you like to go to. Well, you and I have had dinner there a few times.
Yes. And you and I are going to recreate that place.
The rent's too high. You know what? The new mayor, potentially, of New York is going to freeze the rents, and everybody eats for free, so they don't have to worry.
Really?
Yeah.
But how about the rich?
No.
Do they get shot?
No, yes, they get taken away.
Are we kulaks?
Yes, they get taken away.
Lennon
We have to go.
in 23?
We have to leave now.
I'm not
But
John
everybody
Lennon.
else, there he is, Mamdani.
So are we kulaks? Dude, he said he's gonna look. I don't like freezing the rent. I don't think it's a smart policy. I have yet to, look, if it works, convince me. Send me an email, DylanBurnsTV@gmail.com. I would love for it to work. Do you know how cool it would be if it was like, man, housing is too expensive, but I really don't want to see a downgrade. I'm gonna press this button. We've frozen the rent. If it works, fantastic. I'm just fearful of what will happen to the quality of the city's housing. I'm worried about whether or not it will legitimately work, because I have yet to see it work. But your response to this isn't like, well, that's not going to work, and explaining. It's to laugh at it as openly ridiculous. And the thing is about like crossing the line of a socialist elected official is like, they've crossed the line. He's a socialist. He won. The line has been crossed. Just laughing like, ha 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 ha. He's a socialist. He's going to kill us all. Ha ha. You look crazy. He doesn't look crazy. You look crazy. Even in like a joking tone, you're on a serious network. This is CNBC. This is the financial network. Jim Cramer is a financial guy. You could sit there for a second and be like, freezing the rent, but that's going to hurt the quality of the apartments. This isn't going to make it so that these apartments are just going to be frozen and they stay of the same quality and everybody gets to stay in their same apartment. The likelihood of these apartments being repaired or having money invested into them when the profit margins go down. He could sit there and he could explain why there's going to be problems with a freeze to rent policy or potential pitfalls of a freeze to rent policy. But instead we're laughing like Lenin just got it. We're treating it as if that right here, like Pol Pot just won the New York election openly. And the thing is, he's not just going to win this election once. He won the primary and he's going to go through and win the general. 2 opportunities for New Yorkers to knock him down, and he's going to win both of them.
Mamdani.
Maybe he's more moderate
winning
than we
the
think.
Democratic primary for mayor and potentially the successor of Eric Adams. That said, there's still a general election to come here in New York. By the way, of course, we're here, we talk about it, but we are talking about a $2 trillion economy. It's not nothing.
It is a, he
wants to get the rents down. One good way to do it is to stop all business and drive everybody out. That'll bring the rents down.
That's a very good point. Right? To go to Jersey, where I am.
Yeah.
Jersey. Let's go through some of the tweets. We've gone through what the financial network had to say. Let's go through some quick rapid fire tweets. Those with college degrees voted for Mamdani 60-40, which is true. Those without it voted 60-40 for Cuomo. Don't you ever tell me our higher education system isn't indoctrinating our youth. Liberal-run cities are so fucked, holy shit. You'd think we'd learn from San Francisco and Chicago, but no. You know, what I always love about these posts is they assume not that, hey, they learned more and then they became more policy-oriented, or they learned more and after being more educated, they thought that he was a better candidate through a strong basis of critical thought from being, going through the education system. The assumption is always that they ran them through the socialist ringer in college and popped out a proud little foot soldier for Lenin. To me, I would be embarrassed to come out and say the less educated love me. Okay, that's not to say that working because some people think less educated necessarily means working class. That isn't true. Tradesmen are educated. Those people can go to college and still be working class depending on the career they choose. A lot of teachers and such are not high income people. These are people they go through with college degree, but those getting educated, supporting the other person, being something you cite, you got to show the indoctrination, or all you're saying is smart people think that person's. It's never. I understand the point they're trying to go through, but not everybody believes that all colleges are just like socialist training camps. It would be better to have rampant racism and a thriving republic rather than multicultural socialism. Every honest man knows this is true. They just don't have the balls to say it. But I am here to light the way. He's the hero. He's come to save us all from the multiculturalism. We have a Muslim mayor, and we need Ryan Selkis, 2028, to come save us from multiculturalism. Because if we know anything about New York, is that it has never suffered the ill fate of multiculturalism. The survival of New York is in the hand of one man, and it's the literal last person you'd want it to be in that situation. They're saying Eric Adams is the last man who could save New York. Eric Adams has an active corruption problem. He's taken gifts from the Turks and then looking over possible health and safety violations at buildings that the government wants to use. That's a legitimate issue with corruption. But the movement that cares about like fighting corruption, MAGA, we got to strike down the swamp. All of this becomes a backdrop or really something not even pay attention to if the other person just so happens to not be in their camp. And Mamdani is certainly not in their camp. That's how they can tolerate Viktor Orban, but then despise somebody like Donald Tusk or AOC or these people who don't have deep corruption scandals. If another, this is from Curtis Holuk. Curtis. If another 9/11 hit New York City and Zohran Mamdani was mayor, what would happen? Offer prayers for the hijackers. Visit a mosque to warn against Islamophobia before visiting a hospital. What is the what's the hospital part condemnation? I get the like whole haha, he's Muslim, he'll root for terrorism. I understand that view. Yeah. The hospital, what's wrong with visiting a hospital? Is the emphasis that he visits the hospital after the mosque? Because I would assume after a terror attack, a hospital would be, you know, somewhere you would visit. I guess it's the order of events that Curtis is objecting to. Yeah, he would show sympathy to the victims, but in the wrong order. I don't know why you would go so far out of your way to demonize him to the point that he would offer prayers for the hijackers, but then also suggest he would still show sympathy to the victims at a hospital. Okay. Oh, this is the persistent Scott Presley. My gosh. He is, you know, I don't hear people's voices when they tweet, but somehow when he tweets, it grates my ears. We must defeat ranked choice voting everywhere across the country, especially Alaska. I will help wherever I can to ensure we are ready for 2028. So not only is this whiny about how dare we lose or how dare people who disagree with us win an election in a state that has very different values than the community that I live in. But he didn't even, if this was not ranked choice voting, Mamdani still would have won. He got the majority of the votes in the first round. If you look at the primary vote, he's got 43.5. If this was first past the post, the socialists still would have won. This wouldn't have changed anything. If anything, it would have just made this process quicker. That's it. But why do they hate ranked choice voting? The fact that he won has nothing to do with ranked choice voting. And what is so bad about ranked choice voting? I mean, if there's somebody that gets 30% of the vote that 70% of the city doesn't like, but then there's somebody else that people like more, but he gets 60% of the vote, but he's second choice on most of these people's ballot. Like, to me, it seems like a pretty fair system. It's not like nobody else in the world has it. But again, this is just a solution that wouldn't solve the problem of your other candidate just not being that popular. Also, Bill Hackman, the billionaire hedge fund manager, retweeted this fake tweet from Khomeini. In the name of the Most High. I don't know what the Most High, I guess I've never heard that before. The Most High. I offer congratulations to Imam Mamdani. Imam Mamdani. He thought this was real on his magnificent victory. Our work has only just begun. Another example of you being wealthy does not necessarily mean that you are smart, or at the very least have decent media literacy. Laura Loomer, of course, had to jump in on the pile. There will be another 9/11 in New York City, and Zohran will be to blame. Anytime there's a terror, like, was the attack in Las Vegas, was that the fault of the mayor? Was the failures of the school shootings in Texas and the police response? I mean, that actually is like a government failure of response, not even a question of something happening and not being detected. Like, they knew it was happening and they did not act to stop it. Was that Greg Abbott's fault? Like, there's a, if there is a terror attack in New York City, it immediately has to do with the fact that the mayor is Muslim. It couldn't be anything else. Like one of the other large terror threats we have in the country. For example, that right-wing assassin that went around and started assassinating Democrat politicians in Michigan. Or no, Minnesota. Or any other number of terror threats. But no, it has to be the Muslim. I actually did respond to Laura Loomer, who was in one of the replies of one of my mutuals on Twitter, and I did ask her that, and I asked this before Mamdani won, that if Mamdani won, would she handcuff herself to City Hall like she did at Twitter HQ when she lost her Twitter account, and compared it to the Holocaust. So I'm still waiting to see if she'll do it to save the city. Pastor Greg Locke, which is a fundamentalist Christian pastor in the United States, very, very political. If you go to one of his church sessions, it's 50% MAGA preaching, 50% the Bible. New York City has fallen. The demonic sounds of Islamic prayer calls will soon be heard throughout the streets. The trash will pile higher than ever. Jews and Christians will be hated. Rape will skyrocket. New York City will be the next London. You know, for right-wingers, I understand that London has become like synonymous with crime. But for most people, when they hear that, they have no clue what you're saying. If you're just preaching to your own little group, and with Pastor Greg Locke, that's probably the case. But if I go to people like in the world, like if I'm like here in Ukraine, or if I go to somewhere in Sweden and I say, my God, we're the next London, they would just look at you in confusion. They wouldn't, like, we have a good brewer. We got good, like some good breweries, like got some good local brew. There is expensive barbershops. I didn't have a lot of time to build my impression of London, but my goodness, Islamic prayer calls, trash will pile higher than ever. I mean, we're talking about New York here, buddy. I don't know exactly what fear-mongering you're doing there. Jews and Christians will be hated. Again, there are more Jews in New York City than anywhere else in the United States and anywhere else outside of Israel. You cannot be mayor of New York and be a Jew hater. You just cannot. You cannot do it. It is, if you're going to be mayor of New York and you're a Jew hater, your time in New York politics will be tremendously short. And when you listen to the different scandals around Mamdani, around Jews, it's, oh, well, he made this tweet about globalize the Intifada 4 or 5 years ago or some amount of period ago. And when you ask him about it, he talks about, well, Intifada means resistance, and we're talking about globalizing the resistance to, you know, occupation. And this doesn't necessarily translate to everybody as, wow, this guy, I guess he just hates the Jews. He's like Adolf Hitler. No, it translates to, oh, well, this is somebody who might not even agree with me on Israel, depending on the individual Jewish person. But this is not some raging, Zig Heiling anti-Semite as they were trying to portray him. And trying to get him to essentially talk about the existence of a Jewish state in Israel needing to be guaranteed instead of a democratic state equal for all people. That's not going to, like really shock people to their core in a place like New York City, a place that's built on its diversity, a place that is a democratic city, a place like that's not going to be the thing that proves to everybody that he's an anti-Semite. If you want to prove that he's an anti-Semite, show something where he's showing clear and open hatred of Jewish people, not that he hasn't taken up the position of the current government of Israel, or that he disagrees with the idea that states should be built around serving a particular religion. Which, by the way, kind of contradicts the idea that he's going to bring some caliphate to New York, which, while originally people talked about like a caliphate as a joke, I mean, from the way some people are posting, they really do seem to think that. I mean, look at the AI posts have been pretty good. The AI posts have been pretty enjoyable. New York City has fallen. Can it get back up? Where has it gone? Have you lost your New York? Charlie Kirk has probably been the one leaning into one of the biggest conservative voices, alt media conservative voices, you know, leader of Turning Point USA, who's been probably the most open about his open fear and hatred of the idea of a Muslim being in charge of an American city, posting 24 years ago, a group of Muslims killed 2,753 people on 9/11. Why don't people ever talk this way about Timothy McVeigh? Why don't people talk about the Oklahoma City bombing in this way? Why is it always, you know what? we all know why it is always this way. Now a Muslim socialist is on path to run New York City. Somebody responds, Charlie, this is gross and Islamophobic. Take it down. And he paragraph posts a response. Debate me on the merits. Don't just throw out petty thought-terminating cliches. The dude who says, wow, a Muslim just got elected. 9/11. 9/11. 9/11. Like the guy who says that isn't the one engaging in thought-terminating cliches. By the way, this is the type of logic that led to unconstitutional monitoring of mosques in New York City. But Charlie Kirk has never been one to come out and, defend the Constitution when it has to do with people that he doesn't directly serve. Time for the West to wake up. In response to Patrick Bet-David saying, Sharia law is the end goal. New York City is just the opening move. On one post, I hear how Mamdani is a gay woke socialist. The next post I hear that he wants to bring about Sharia law. I'm sorry to tell you guys all this, and while Mamdani is not a Marxist-Leninist of the Soviet style, but the Mujahideen fought against the communist government of Afghanistan for a reason. The Islamic Revolution that occurred in Iran, and then the repressions of the democratic forces and communist and socialist forces in the country happened because they don't make alliances or strong, relationships with religious fundamentalists and socialists who view God as an opiate for the masses, at least if you want to go to the fundamental socialist view on the matter. They're not strong allies. It doesn't work. If you read his policy, the Sharia law doesn't say anything about rent control or rent freezes. Sharia law doesn't say anything about Mamdani wanting to bring the halal truck costs down. Sharia law doesn't dictate that the mayor of New York is going to go out and go on queer people. Can we actually? I want to show you guys the person who's going to bring about Sharia law. Let's see if I can find this. Here we go. Please tell me how this man is bringing. Hey, here's the image. Could you see the Ayatollah doing this interview and giving these answers?
Chris, did Ellen come out to in her sitcom in 1997? Reese Witherspoon, Laura Dern, or Felicity Huffman?
I'm gonna go with Laura Dern just because I love Jurassic Park.
And you're gonna be correct. Let's go! Hi, I'm Ananiah. This is Gaydar. What does WLW mean?
Win, loss, win?
Okay. I like the sentiment. It means women loving women.
Also agree.
Yeah. On Gaydar, we're politically correct. I live. Which queer group is currently being erased from all federal government websites?
Trans people.
Yes, they are. F you. Everyone in Trump's cabinet. You can't be here when I say that.
I'm just vehemently opposing their policies because they're disgusting.
You better get the SAT word in, too. Which of these people is homophobic and they're trying to ban gay marriage in Michigan? And which of them is a gay icon?
Isn't this the guy who has the Elvis voice?
That's not Austin Butler.
Oh.
Okay, so who's the other one?
He's got to be trying to ban gay marriage.
Well, yes. With that middle part.
Is the right or the left?
The one on the right.
Okay, never trust the right.
Period. You gotta.
Dude, this is not. I'm sorry. He's not bringing Sharia law. Okay, we're not getting gay woke commie Sharia law in New York City. Okay, he's either a woke commie or he's a Sharia law fundamentalist. Okay, he can't be both things at the same time. Okay, I don't care how many flags you put in your bio. Those flags do not go together. They are rubbing it in our faces. London, Calgary, Rotterdam, and soon New York City. The power centers of the West will soon have Muslim mayors. You become what you import. Some of them were just more inspiring of panic. Evacuate New York City immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. We urge all Jews to evacuate New York City. Somebody responds, you first. Then they respond, we are in Israel. They're truly feeling the impact of Mamdani's tight, red-fisted reign of terror on the ground in New York City, on the ground. From the President of the United States' son, responding to Michael Malice saying, I'm old enough to remember when New Yorkers endured 9/11 instead of voting for it. and the son of the president says, New York City has fallen. Again, to be Muslim is to be 9/11. This is just the attack version. Remember that Family Guy skit of, I hate to say this, remember that Family Guy skit? Remember that Family Guy skit? Lewis just says 9/11 and everybody claps in honor of 9/11. This is just the inverse of that. Instead of clapping for 9/11, it's 9/11, right? I mean, if they couldn't get Hassan going with Mamdani out there and taking social media posts together, posting that online, and watching those outlets try to say, my God, Mamdani hangs out with the guy who says that America deserved 9/11. If that did not stick in New York, then you're not just going to be able to manifest Muslim 9/11 scary. That's not going to be a manifesting attack strategy that is going to work. You're going to fail. So far, in my mind, I don't think the right has really found a good way to respond to this type of, I would say, left-wing Tea Party moment within the Democratic Party. Now, whether or not it continues to grow as we get closer to the midterms and expand, we'll have to wait and see. But as we watch them try to go either with the same attacks that Cuomo failed at, or just pointing out that he's Muslim, or just referencing 9/11 as if it wasn't the people who did endure that, who voted for him, knowing that he's not like the people who hijacked their aircraft. I just don't think any of this is particularly effective. But give them time. Give them time. I'm sure they'll dig up a bunch of old tweets about him saying defund the police, or him reposting that communist mayor from, overseas, or whatever. I'm sure they'll be able to dig up those old tweets and throw it at him. And maybe that'll have some effectiveness. But if that's not the person that they see going through that warm filter on the what he's posting on his social media channels, I just don't think it's going to be effective, honestly. I think they are starting the reign of Mamdani face first in the ground when it comes to attacking him. Starting off rough. Sup, cutie? Well, thank you, Lima Beam. I appreciate that. Lima Beam's a cute name.